Boom shakalaka. All right. Sorry, I tooted. Excellent connection. Tooted. Oh, wait. Sorry, I tooted. Why did it say tooted?
That's weird.
Connection.
Why is it doubling?
Wait.
Go to the current.
What in the world?
Can you even hear me? Testing. Oh,
Yeah,
Oh,
there you are.
am I echoing? Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3 2 3. Testing.
Yeah.
Am I echoing?
There's no echo on your end.
Testing 1 1
And what's weird is that it wasn't even echo. It just sounded like a double. You know? I don't know what's going on there. It's low. One again.
Could it potentially be a low enough latency that it was picking up from your phone, or
No, not at the first one. Up yet. Da-da-da-da. Wait. Yes. Think about that. Okay. All right. Perfect. We're good. We should be good to go now.
we don't have to restart anything to get that change?
Yeah. I guess we'll.
Shouldn't have to.
All right. I'm gonna test 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Test. 1 2 3. Let's make sure my voice is not echoing. Testing 1 2 3. Test. 1 2 3. Let's make sure my voice is not echoing. Okay. Yeah. Fixed.
Sounds like it's fixed. We're gonna do some more tests though to
Yeah.
make sure that things are working properly. Because I don't want that to completely affect our whole stream.
Yeah. I guess we want to go ahead
Okie
and
dokie. So, everybody, welcome to the
wanna turn on
classic and much anticipated theta wave audio test.
Oh yeah, it's the best part of the whole night. Really.
Honestly, the stuff during our podcast is really relatively less important.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is where we get our most viewership, anyways. Is
And,
the tests.
That's true. That is actually unfortunately true.
It's like we have like 5 people watching us like go through all these tests. It's like, come on, you guys ever gonna like actually start a podcast?
But we did take steps towards resolving some of our issues we were running into before.
Yes.
One of the issues we found out was because he was not running his second camera and I was, like,
Yeah.
we had to disconnect with our with how fast our stuff was being processed, and so it was causing this weird like pre-reverb stuff.
Yeah, it's the strangest thing.
Then we also tried to fix our reverb.
Are your lights on?
Thank you. In
I'm not
general, your lights out.
I need to turn mine on.
We
Kumbaya,
fixed
my
our
lord.
reverb problems in general by adding another panel
Mm-hmm.
here behind us.
Yes.
So now we have anti-reflective material directly behind our head.
This is the best that I think it's ever been. At least the most like optimal environment for audio, which is great.
Test it and listen out.
Are you still connected to your? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Do you think it just be the connection? Do you just think it could be the connection between you and your PC? There's no. I could turn mine down. Or no. Mm-hmm. In mine's here, you can see my whole face. Do we want to turn on the camera so that we can see if we're synced up? In that, or does it not really matter? Mm. Oh yeah, right now.
Testing 1 2 3. 1 2 3.
Ah. Mm. Oh whoops. Probably could turn my gain down.
Let's try it now.
Yes.
Now. And see if we sound a little, if I sound a little louder and he sounds a little less blown out.
Yes. Let's see if our levels match. See if that's going to happen.
Okay, so there is something.
Yeah. And if you're one of the 3 people watching us, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're with us in these troubling times of audio issues that shouldn't exist. Let's continue.
Ooh, Fester.
Yes. Oh.
Feel like it's a syncing issue where like it's having to resync things back up, and so it's causing the audio to be played again, or a portion of the audio as it's trying to sync it up, which would indicate that the video speed slower than the audio
Video speed.
because it's having to replay audio in order to match the
Oh. Could be the speed of
So
connection.
let me double check my latency settings here.
Sounds great.
Sounds like we have a plan, ladies and gentlemen.
A huge plan.
Zoom in. I have like both of my monitors showing at the moment, so I can zoom in.
Oh, yo.
Like this.
That's funny.
Okay, so we were at 4,251 milliseconds of latency. Which should be what is set. You know what? Turn monitoring off. And addition, look at how confusing this matrix is. So here I have a virtual device that is receiving our microphone inputs. Or actually, here and here are yours and my microphone inputs. This is receiving the output um, from my virtual ASIO, which is running the software that I'm running is doing that, and so I'm like basically like just configuring the channels to like loop back around and go to wherever they need to go, but it's very confusing. I think though we've got something undesirable going on here with potentially what is this? Okay, that's your feed. That's my feed within the program itself, and this is your feed. This is your feed. We have stuff being fed to. Okay. Yeah, I think that needs to not happen. Okay, let's see if we just resolved it.
Okay. Let's see if that works well. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3, and go.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
I mean, it seems
The majority of the time it's
yeah.
fine.
Well, let me talk for like an extended period of time to see if this like having this weird like if it's just like this one like start thing that's like picking it up and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, now I know what's going on. I don't know. It's really strange. Testing. Hello, ready and go.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing.
And testing. Testing.
Oh,
I think that's what we're watching.
oh.
I'm pretty happy with that. I think
Sounds so
it's minimal.
good.
It's minimal. I'm happy with that.
Okay, so maybe I just try and figure out later what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really see a point to delaying just to try and
Yeah.
diagnose that minimal of a
Especially when it's like the majority of the time, even when
problem.
switching back and forth, it sounds great. So
Yeah. I don't know. It feels like something is resetting in there, like after a period of no
yeah,
audio or
that's
something like
what it
that,
seems to be.
and it's causing like some sort of like of doubling.
Because it was even fine when we were switching back and forth. It was not that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems to be like a nothing and then getting started.
To check the plugins and see what's going on there. Nice that even when we're talking quiet, it can pick us up.
Mm-hmm. Yes, dude. I think it's perfect. I am happy with that.
Okay. Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yes. And honestly, this is like I know we ran into like unexpected problems.
Right, like
But actually didn't go too bad.
as far as our typical problems go. This is
I mean, usually it'd be
okay.
like 12:30 by the time we've kind of ended the whole process of being
Right.
audio.
Let's do a quick check on our video just to make sure that
Oh yeah,
we're not too far out of sync.
too far.
Okay, guys, as you can
All
see,
right. Yes, we are going to be talking.
we
Talking is
I need to get
my
this out of my face.
lips synced up.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers.
Peter Piper picked a bag of pickled peppers. How many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick? Oof.
That is not synced up.
That is not synced up at all.
Wait, what's happening before? Like, where is it in correlation with the audio?
It's like Peter
The
Piper.
audio's afterward?
Yeah. You- hmm.
For now, I'm gonna try to adjust our latency settings, I guess.
Yeah.
Might help if I can close down some unnecessary.
True. Hair does look a lot better on that side.
Told ya.
Wait, that was synced up.
Was it?
Yeah. Well, look.
Wait, I'm seeing. That was after I closed the program, so maybe
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's helping somehow.
Actually, maybe it's just like connection. It's like too much processing going on.
Let me close down Chrome too.
Yeah. That was synced up. I didn't see anything. Wait, that was synced up. It's really not the best still.
Really?
Yeah. Like sometimes it hits it, sometimes it doesn't.
Let me close down my connection to my computer and just see.
To see if that helps. No, I would guess that that would help a lot actually.
Okay. Testing. 1, 2, 3.
Testing.
Testing. Testing. Testing.
Testing. Let's see if we are synced up.
Betty butter, bought a bit of bitter butter.
Bitty
What's a Betty butter? If I put this bit of butter in my batter, it'll make my batter bitter.
batter
So
better.
Betty butter bought a bit of better butter, made her batter better.
Batter body better butter better bitty bitty body bitty voodoo. That's what I know. Nope. I mean, it's better. It's not perfect.
So, looking, the audio is behind the video.
Behind now.
What?
Behind.
Is it behind the video or in front of it? So testing, the visual of testing comes after the audio. Wait, let's play it again.
Yeah.
The visual happened first, right?
Yeah. Right. Testing.
The audio is afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
We need to increase the latency.
Yeah. It got like slightly better, but yeah, it's not.
Have the ability to change.
You can change. You can be who you want to be.
Be anything.
I want to be
Someone that has a working podcast.
someone whose voice is synced up with their camera.
I want somebody whose lips match the sounds oozing out of their face.
Really sensual.
Have 4,251 seconds of latency.
Man.
Be the problem. It shouldn't be the plugins that I've got running on this problem. It should be something going on with all of the
Hmm.
Wait.
All right. Before we would talk, and then like a half a second later would be the audio.
Seconds. This video delay 0.8 seconds. Keep it in sync.
All right. Let's see if that works.
Testing. Betty Botter bought a bit of bitter
Boom.
butter.
Boom. Boom. Yes. 1, 2, 3.
What said Betty Botter if I had a podcast?
Dude, Betty Botter would finally be able to bob, dude. That's what would happen.
What the hell is happening?
What was that? That happened last time too. What in the world? We have a voice distortion.
Why do I sound like a ghoul?
That is so weird.
Okay, let's just turn off both of our cameras for now.
Okay.
Let's try that and just that thing is happening more often
Mm-hmm.
since I increased the delay. Let me just try turning off the delay entirely first,
Yeah.
and we will
Go from there.
see what that does.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Testing now. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Testing one.
Testing, Betty. Had a bit of bad booze.
Yes, indeed. Wah.
Can't tell from over here.
Oh, sorry. You can just look at it. It's still behind.
That's way better than it was. It's not
Yeah.
on, but it's way less behind than it was. Right?
Yeah. I mean, still like somewhat noticeable some of them at the time.
Let me try it. Doing one last thing with these delays. Try adding an audio delay for some reason. Just see if that works.
Yeah. Oh my god. That's pretty bad.
Testing. Testing. Betty. 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 Data wave.
Yeah. It would have to be like a super slight delay. Maybe that'll do something. Wee little smudge. Teensy weensy. Super small amount that we are going to test to see if this will sync up.
But it probably won't.
Probably not.
Okay, it's definitely the fact. It's definitely my. I feel like it's got to be my computer that's struggling right now, and so yeah. So let me just try. Let's try turning off our cameras. Both of us. Why didn't you just click your camera button?
What the?
What?
I don't know. Hold on.
What? The?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing.
This is a titillating test.
Titillating.
Titillating test.
Oh yeah. Love how we go from audio issue to
Video issues.
Issues. Ooh. Now it's voice.
What is going on?
What's weird is that it sounded like it's like clear, but just like distorted.
Have you ever come across something like this before?
Never.
What the hell? I'm gonna switch from my default microphone, Yeti, to microphone, Yeti. I don't know why in the world that would help, but I'm just gonna try it anyways.
I feel like maybe there's a sampling rate issue, like where something is being recorded at a different sampling rate and is trying to be processed at a different sampling rate than it's supposed to be. And so as a result, it's like stretching the audio out
Oh, yeah.
and causing a same effect as if you were to like as the old kind of pitch shifting techniques, which involved stretching,
Yeah.
compressing audio in order to get like the rabbit sound effect or something like that.
Huh.
So I need to check like our
Well, it fixed itself now.
what is the sampling rate on your microphone?
Sampling rate. How do we go to check that?
Well,
Settings.
you can check it through your settings, but I'm thinking it might just be easier to look up the Yeti sampling rate.
Yeah.
Should be either 41 or 48.8, like 41,
48.
48,
Yeah, 48, 24-bit.
4-bit.
Yeah. Bit rate. Let's see. Let's see the effects. Who knows what will happen? Hopefully something good. Hopefully something good. That's what I'm hoping for.
Okay, I also reduced the number of racks that I had going on in here because I previously had 64 and I didn't need it because we were only using 2.
Okay.
So I removed like all of the rest of them. So hoping that like for
does
some
something.
reason just that will like free up
Help.
some of the processing power here.
It's still like, okay.
So it's a little off.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try a couple last things. Let's reduce the buffer size, which will allow me, basically it's like way to decrease latency. The downside is that sometimes you end up with like clicks or pops or issues if it's not big enough for the amount of audio that you're processing. So in our context, it should be.
I guess we'll see.
Obviously want to avoid that, but we should still be able to lower it. Hang on a second. Where's the other audio metric window?
Where is it? Close that down. Excellent connection. Is we have an excellent connection. Indeed.
Found ya. Or currently set to 4,800, which is in line, right, with our. And the BAIO is set to 4,800. Oh my goodness. What? Is that true?
Lying to you. Trying to manipulate you.
Saying. Got 7,000. Whoa, his buffer is way too big.
Oh. Change it. Let's go.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Let's try this now.
Okay.
Try Betty bought. She bought a bit.
She bought a bit. Okay. Yes. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Here, you can look at it.
Change anything. Save. Let's try now.
Okay.
I just adjusted it by another 500, so we'll see if that's enough.
We'll see. Adjusted it by 500, like
Just enough.
just enough. Yes. Let's see if we have audio. Is your computer upstairs cooked?
Okay, we have audio.
Something happened there.
Almost there. Almost.
We're close.
So it's only at 1,000. It was at 7,000.
Okay.
7,000. So if it's only just crackling now, I should be able to increase it by another
1,000 or so.
500.
500. Okay.
Okay, let's try this one.
All right.
See if this sounds better. If we're not getting any crackling.
Hopefully, no crack-a-lacking.
Low latency, hopefully.
Very low.
It's only just crackling now. I should be able to increase it by 500. Let's try this one. All right. See if this sounds better. If we're not getting any crackling. Hopefully, no crack-a-lacking. No crackling.
Very low. Nice. How does it act?
So test. Betty bot.
Real
better.
test.
Better bot a bit better.
Real test. Now.
Real.
With audio and no
Test.
crackling.
No.
Yes. 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 Oh, my goodness.
Better, but it's still not fixed.
I mean, it's the night's still young.
Oh.
Hmm?
I have to do that for every single one of these because there's 3 of them.
Oh.
I only did it for one.
Dude, gotta collect all the pieces. Fun.
All right.
At least we know that fixing one helped a little bit, and so hopefully the other two also.
Yeah.
Just kind of bring it together.
So 1,500 for each. Okay, we're going to double check this one, make sure that me setting it to 1,500 didn't cause any issues.
No issues right now. Well, we're going to see how well this works. Yes, yes, yes. Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We are testing. Yes, indeed. Doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So. We. Are. Testing. Ding.
All right, don't do that. That's the end. All right, testing this last one, 1,500 samples.
Yes. Let's see how this goes.
1,500.
See if we are synced up fully with the whole fusion of 1,500. That's actually pretty good.
Pretty close.
Pretty close?
It's not perfect. You can tell, but better. Tell me what you think.
1500. How this goes. 1,500. If we are synced up fully, the whole. Yeah, it's definitely still. Yeah, definitely still noticeable. That's okay. Definitely still noticeable, but
I mean, it's better though, right?
yes. No, it's definitely a whole lot better because it would be like I say one word, and then right after I complete the sentence, it starts.
Okay, so that means that something I'm doing is working. So I'm going to basically adjust these one more time to be somewhere around 1,200 each, or 12,000. Wait, 1,200? 12? No,
Maybe.
1,200.
No.
Not yet. Okay, now.
Okay.
This one should have adjusted one of them at least. Now that might cause an issue because the rest of them are not at the same latency. So, well, it might cause a syncing issue. So we might hear some doubling or something like that. I don't know.
Do you want to go ahead and put them all there?
Yeah, let me go ahead and adjust them all. As long as I'm not hearing any static.
Yeah.
Test. Make sure that doesn't have any static there. Hey, I don't hear any static.
Well, I don't know if
That was. I think, but looking.
Yep. No static.
Change the second one to. So those should be both for both of our mics. So that should be mean that both of us are going to be slightly less latent.
Okay.
So let's do a quick test just to see if that seems to have improved it at all. See if I need to continue to adjust the third one.
Third one.
Perhaps. Perchance. Both of us are going to be slightly less latent. Okay. Let's do a quick test just to see if that seems to have improved it at all. If I need to continue to adjust the third one.
It is. It does look closer. More so.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. I'm gonna see if I can lower ours down like really low for ours specific processing.
do 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 do. Something big is happening, cause oh 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 oh. Oh. There we go. Something in there. Ah.
Well, that might be from yours. So I just adjusted both of ours. So let's see. Testing. Is there crackle?
Crackle, crackle, crackalackin'. We'll see how it's smacking.
Little.
Yeah, a little bit.
So it really does need to be 1200.
Mm-hmm. Telling you that the connection is actually really good. Like it says excellent connection. Usually it says good connection, so it's better than it usually is right now. And yet,
And now
the end is near. Excellent connection. Usually it says good connection. It's better than it usually is right now.
why is it so damn hard to like sync up audio?
Maybe it's because we have different microphones. Do you think that could be an issue?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
They're same company, same specs. Like
Yeah.
some similar specs. A little different technology, but mostly the same. It wouldn't make that big of a difference.
Mm.
There's not that much delay.
Mm.
Like between what I'm seeing here.
That.
Okay. Hmm. Wait a second. Do we really need that one? Be processing this stuff? Turn this off. What is happening to your screen?
Oh no. I don't know. It's this thing is broken. Yeah, this computer's kind of falling apart.
Wow, that's really not bad at all now.
Oh well, maybe.
There's something else, something weird that I had going on with combining the two together. That was like. Anyway, let's see if this seems to make a difference with our latencies.
Perhaps it will. Perhaps it won't.
Perhaps.
Perchance.
Perhaps.
Perhaps it will. Perhaps it won't. Perchance. Weird. It's almost like when it like slightly glitches, then you're on. It's synced up. Hmm. Synchronization processes. Synchrony. I just wanna be part of your symphony. Funny. You hold me tight and I let go. Symphony.
Hold on a second.
Hang on.
Hang on. I've got an idea.
Well, gentlemen, I may not have a brain, but I have an idea.
Oh, yeah.
What's that movie called?
The video delay added to since those are where we're getting our audio.
Hmm. Essentially.
Oops. Let's remove that.
Did you switch cameras?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Okay. God, help this freaking be the problem, and hopefully we'll test.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. Ugh. The delay is so long. Hello, everybody.
Look at it. Watch it. Breaking be the problem, and hopefully we'll test.
Yeah.
I think as good as we're gonna get.
That's
like,
as good as
here.
we're gonna get. Yeah, that's
Like,
great.
can you let's do a little bit
Do
of
a little
just
more.
extended normal kind of conversation
Mm-hmm.
and see if overall things are looking pretty indistinguishable.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. All right, Ryan. Tell me
So
how's your.
let's tease. Let's
Okay.
put a little tease out there.
All right, a little tease about what we're going to be talking about.
Indeed.
Okay,
What
yes.
are we
So
talking about?
we're going to be talking about one of the most, if not the most, ancient signaling networks within the human body. And it has a history of over 600 million years old. You must wonder, why in the world would a system stay so conserved over such a long period of time? Tells you it's something vital to life itself.
Coming up next on Theta Wave. I think that's as good as we're gonna get right now until I can further like optimize our.
Yeah.
It's pretty much on like
Mhm.
if you probably like had it in full screen, you might be able to tell, you know, that there was a dissonance.
Yeah. But it's honestly not even bad.
It's not, no.
Like,
Okay. And plus, I'm still connected to my computer too. So
mm,
if I were to disconnect, then
it probably was even better.
it would probably get better. Okie dokie. Well, I'm so glad that this podcast did not disappoint in our
Yes.
classic
I was worried.
audio
I
problems.
was worried that all our viewers wouldn't get, a nice extended 2
Yeah.
hours of audio testing and video. Now it's video.
It's
So,
actually video testing. Yeah, this time around it was the video that was a problem.
mhm.
And I will say though, for encouragement purposes, we had our audio working the way it was supposed to be working,
That is true.
like before we ever even started. And
Exactly.
so that part was ready to go.
Mhm. Audio throughout this entire thing has sounded great.
Yeah.
So, I think it's a
So
good
it's
thing.
just our video, and hopefully that won't happen again now that we get that setting,
Yeah.
changed.
Mhm. And it'll save. This one will
Yeah, this
save?
time everything saved
Okay.
properly. So
Thank
yeah.
the Lord.
We're gonna go to our starting student screen,
All right.
and we're gonna give ourselves a little bit of a moment to recollect ourselves.
Save it. Focus in.
Not that we're rattled,
Not at all. Just
but if we were rattled, that would be a very natural,
very natural.
very human response to
Mhm.
dealing with technology being an asshole.
Exactly. So, time to reset our brains, focus on our goals,
And we'll be back.
we'll be back.
See you in a few minutes on Theta Wave. Still got audio going on because I haven't figured out how to mute this.
Farted again.
Stop it.
Oh, I'm such a naughty boy.
My mixer. I'm about to mix you up.
Hello and welcome to the Theta Wave Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Holland. I'm a neuroscience researcher here with my co-host, Ryan Reed. Ryan Reed is a machine learning expert, a neuroscience researcher as well, and singer, songwriter, and playwright. Ryan, what have we got going on today?
We have a fascinating topic we've been trying to get to for a bit.
Yeah,
Kind of the same as the LSTM cells,
Mm-hmm.
actually.
Yeah.
We were trying to get to that for a while too. But we are going to be talking about the endocannabinoid system.
Ooh.
Yes, and that is Jacob's topic for today. He's going to be walking us through that and trying
Mm-hmm.
to give us kind of the comprehensive overview on what is going on in that system and some of
Yeah.
the properties that make it unique. So
Mm-hmm.
after that, we may have a free flow section.
We'll
but
see.
We want to give the full shebang and full
Yeah.
amount of time to the such a comprehensive and complex system. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about it is that it's one of the most abundant. So the endocannabinoid system, its receptors, is one of the most abundant receptors in the brain. And it's interesting because it's so little talked about. And so I really, through this, kind of want to spread awareness about the endocannabinoid system and just a little bit of information before we really dive into it, is that here in Texas, it looks like there's going to be a bill passed called SB3, which is going to ban all THC and Delta 8 products within Texas. And so starting September 1st, it looks like cannabis is going to be completely illegal outside of medical marijuana going forward, which is going to be putting 50,000 people out of jobs and taking away an $8 billion revenue industry, which is really sad because it looks like it's a part of the lieutenant governors and some other people actually where the history of the endocannabinoid system starts in 1964 with Raphael McCollum isolating tetrahydrocannabinol, and that is THC. And he was going through all of the phytocannabinoids, which is all of the cannabinoid-like substances within the cannabis plant. And when he isolated THC, he found that it was the primary psychoactive component of cannabis. And so that was pretty huge. And for the next 6 years, they were kind of, just like seeing the psychological effects on cannabis just because the technology at the time was not really good enough to directly see the receptors at that time with what cannabis was interacting with. And so they thought that it had some weird kind of magical like membrane property where it could like permeate a bunch of cells and then, just have this high effect. And it was really in the late 1980s where Alan Howlett and William Devon at the St. Louis University first discovered specific binding sites that THC bound to using, I think it was radioactive THC analogs. And so they could see actually for the first time what receptors THC was binding to. And there's they found that they were concentrated in areas like the hippocampus, the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, and as well as other places that made sense because it really corresponded with what they knew about those brain regions and like the effect that THC had. And so they finally found the first cannabinoid receptor, which is CB1. And then they later found in like 2 years later, they found CB2 receptors. And so these are among the most abundant G protein coupled receptors in the brain, or the most abundant G coupled protein receptors, alongside with GPR and PPAR.
Do you want to explain G-coupled protein receptors?
Yeah. So G coupled protein receptors, they're they they're pretty much produced on uh, specific areas. Trying to remember exactly what that is because I didn't get too much into G coupled protein receptors. The G coupled, I know that Oh shoot, I'm gonna have to like go in my notes.
Sorry
real
to
quick.
put you on the spot there.
No, you're good. You're good. We do know that they have lots of particular interest with like pain perception and as well as sensations and anxiolytic effects. Um,
Mhm.
so that kind of gives you a picture of kind of what these do. So you got like other G-coupled protein receptors within the endocannabinoid system, but CB1 and CB2 are the most abundant. Do you have the
Mhm.
G-coupled protein receptors?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, can you
Yeah,
explain that a little bit?
they're so they. I mean, you're pretty much on the.
Okay.
They respond to basically a wide variety of stimuli,
Mm.
such as light,
Okay. Yeah.
pain,
So I was like,
peptides,
yeah.
sugars, lipids,
Mm.
and basically when a ligand like interacts with a receptor, it triggers
I see. That's right.
complex chain of downstream,
Mhm.
events
Yeah.
involving G proteins and
Mm.
specifically in secondary messengers,
I see.
which influences the cell's
Yeah,
overall functioning.
that makes sense. So yeah, but anyways, that's a better explanation, but it's just kind of a broad thing that interacts with a lot of stimuli, like you said. The
And the reason I asked was because those have been uh, G protein receptors have been things that I have come across before, but have been outside the scope of
yeah.
the majority
Mhm.
of my research and studies.
Yeah.
And so, because even some in-depth like neuroscience studies don't go into
Yeah.
um, all the different
Mhm.
receptor types
Yeah.
and the differences between them. And so, um, that one, was one that I wasn't quite as familiar with, and
Mhm.
so I wanted to see
Yeah.
if that was something you could help clarify.
Mhm. I wish it did a better job at that because, I mean, I looked at what G-coupled protein receptors were, and it did seem to just give this, like, overall general, like, "Oh, these are, the different ones, and this is what they do," instead of, like, this kind of, overview of,
Right.
like, the actual function as a kind of meta whole. But pretty much, so that's the kind of the discovery of CB1 and CB2, and then in, I think it was 1992, uh Raphael McCoolum's team, for the first one who isolated THC, they were the first ones to find the actual endocannabinoids because they're like, why in the world do we have these receptors that are for, uh, an exogenous plant? That makes absolutely no sense. Like, do we make these like expensive proteins to just get high? Well,
Yeah.
they came to the conclusion very quickly that that was obviously not the case, and that there was actual endogenous cannabinoids that was interacting and binding to these receptors. And if you're not familiar with what uh, like neurotransmitters and receptors are, I want you to think of neurotransmitters like a key and a receptor like a lock. And pretty much, this is like the standard explanation for all of this. You hear it all the time if you go to school for this type of stuff. But pretty much, so the receptor's locked, and then it's these molecules, these neurotransmitters, and other things that will stick in and fit perfectly. That then unlock its function, and then you'll have an effect that happens
And
there.
that's a highly simplified um,
Very.
explanation because the reality of them is that there are things that can partially
Hmm.
block a receptor, but not fully block a receptor, which
Yeah.
would be like a partial key,
Hmm.
you know. Um,
Which is it? Yeah.
and then like others, that interact in different ways, and
Hmm.
some that um, you know, don't even block a receptor, but may change the the um, uh, polarization of like the membrane and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of different ways that it interacts, but in essence, it does function like
Hmm.
a kind of like that in that when it's uh, you know attaches to a receptor site,
Hmm.
like it can um, kind of unlock certain functionalities that wouldn't happen otherwise.
Yeah. And that's actually a great leeway or lead into the actual endocannabinoids. So and I'll get to why in a second. So the first one that was discovered in 1992 by McCullen's group was called, so the original term was arachidonyl ethanolamide, and that obviously wasn't a very catchy phrase. And so after really understanding its mechanisms and effects, they named it anandamide. And anandamide is derived from the Sanskrit word meaning bliss, ananda. And that should paint kind of a picture as to what anandamide kind of does in the brain, is that it is correlated with the euphoria and the blissful effects that is correlated with cannabis. And then shortly after, around 2 years later, in 1994, they then discovered the primary endocannabinoid that interacts with the brain and the body is 2-arachidonoglycerol. And I'm going to call that 2-AG. And 2-AG is the actual most abundant. So the original hype was around anandamide at the time, and that one's been the most extensively studied, as well as 2-AG has been pretty extensively studied too. But sometimes it's up to like 2-AG is like 200 to like 1,000 times more abundant than anandamide in the brain. And so this is really its primary mechanism. And so that's kind of like the history of those first kind of like big four that kind of define the majority of the functions, the primary functions of the endocannabinoid system. And so let's really actually go into at least the biggest function of the endocannabinoid system, which is retrograde signaling.
Ah, yes.
Yes. So this is where it kind of gets into the actual homeostatic properties of the endocannabinoid system. So pretty much normally how neurotransmission works is that there's an action potential happens and travels along the axon into the terminal, and then you have in the presynaptic neuron you have these vesicles that actually store the neurotransmitters that then once get stimulated release into the gap junction and then binds to the postsynaptic neuron.
And for those that don't know neuroscience well enough to kind of pick up on this terminology, when somebody says presynaptic and postsynaptic, presynaptic refers to the sending neuron, the neuron that's sending the signal, or rather the synapse that is sending the signal to the next neuron. And then the postsynaptics refers to the synapse on the neuron that is receiving that signal. And so just differentiate when pre just means like the neuron that's sending, and post means the neuron that's receiving.
So pretty much you have the sending neuron storing the actual chemical messengers that then bind to receptors on the receiver. And that's usually how just standard neurotransmission works.
Typically, yeah.
Typically. But when you actually look at the endocannabinoid system, pretty much it is produced. Endocannabinoids are actually produced on demand in membrane lipids when the neuron gets too depolarized, which means it's firing way too fast. And guess where it's produced? Is it the presynaptic, the signal sender? No, it's actually in reverse. It's the sender that is producing the endocannabinoids, these neurotransmitters, that then bind to receptors on the presynaptic neuron to the sender.
The reverse of how it typically
Yeah.
works.
So this kind of just adds like the complexity of how to normalize signaling in the brain. And also, something that's interesting is that there's CB1 receptors on the mitochondria of glial cells. And so as these endocannabinoids get released, they don't bind just to the presynaptic, but also the cleanup crew.
And what, okay, that's what I was going to ask you to clarify for everybody was what glial cells were.
Yeah, so glial cells, they pretty much, they take all of the neurotransmitters that get released, and then they pretty much clean them up, and if they can, they'll
clean
store
up on
them.
aisle 5.
Exactly. And then they'll take, whatever's usable and they'll put it back and store it back in the vesicles. Though it seems like the enzyme,
So is this, sorry to interrupt,
good.
is the glial cleanup then the same as the term reuptake when
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. I was hesitant to use like uptake and reuptake, just because I know some people don't really know what
Well, it's
that is.
helpful to explain
Yeah.
both directions. I
Hmm.
mean, like because reuptake is more commonly used as to refer to the um, kind of regathering of the neurochemicals
Hmm.
once they're
Yeah.
released. But it's helpful to also know like where that actually looks like.
Yeah. Hmm.
So,
Yeah, so it's that the reuptake process and then binds, and pretty much what it does is that because it binds to the mitochondria within glial cells. What it does is it's pretty much putting the brakes on the energy production within them, making sure they don't actually work too hard um, in their cleanup process, which is really interesting. It's
it's like a safety mechanism on like an engine or
mhm,
something like that. Like that when it gets too hot, it like kind of
yeah.
shuts it certain functionalities down to make sure it doesn't damage itself.
Yeah, I mean, you can really think of it like an internal thermostat. That's pretty much the endocannabinoid system. That's one of its primary homeostatic processes, is that it always makes sure is that everything is in its most functional state.
Mm-hmm.
And so, in order to really emphasize that, they get produced on demand by lipid membranes, and the actual production process still debated. It's still very theoretical, and so we still have a lot more to explore um, on this, but they're sent out, binds, and then they degrade very quickly, very fast.
So they themselves don't stick around very long.
No,
It's more like a like a uh, what is the emergency medic? What are they called?
um, first responders. I don't know,
Yeah, like I
something
mean,
like
kind
that.
of like there's another word I was looking for, but like kind of like that, like um a immediate quick reaction to
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah,
help regulate things.
exactly. And so they bind, they degrade really fast, and they make sure. Well, what's also nice is that it's really monitoring the calcium influx in a cell, and so it actually monitors the calcium intake and then responds to those calcium spikes.
Now, what cells and neuron types uh, and are those receptors synapse types are those receptors like found in? Like in other words, like with our main excitatory like
Oh yeah, I remember
transmitters
hearing
like
that.
glutamate, we've got obviously our dopamine and our
Hmm.
serotonin, like those they're typically there are certain pairings that are found or certain pairings that are not found,
Hmm.
and as far as like ones that are linked down, down chain. And in this case, because it's on the postsynaptic terminal and its job is to regulate the firing, um, rate of presynaptic and the production of presynaptic,
Hmm.
neurochemicals, then that would imply that it's, primary, it's unless it's universal that it's going to have a certain type of
Yeah.
neurochemical that it tends to deal with.
Well, I would say that we know that they are most abundant on cortical glutamatergic neurons. So
Okay, so it
the
is
main,
glutamate.
yeah,
Oh, that's
well,
what I figured since glutamate is the
mhm,
main excitatory
exactly.
neurotransmitter.
And so that has usually the most risk of being overexcited. And so it desperately needs the most amount of
Plus,
regulation
when we get
possible.
anxious and whatnot, like our usually it's a result of like, or partially a result of, or worsened by our glutamate response getting out
Hmm.
of hand, and
Yeah.
so that is interesting in its application towards why something like marijuana might be so relaxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
and so kind of chilling or mediating, as far as that goes, because um,
Mm.
if it's regulating glutamate, that means that it's going to have anti-anxiety effects.
Well, it's actually very interesting. And this kind of goes back to anandamide, which is like the bliss molecule. It's, why you get euphoria and you can feel relaxed and you feel like, not, everything's great, because you're high. And
high all the time to keep you off my mind. Sorry.
So where was I at? Okay, so
Bliss.
bliss, yes. So this is where kind of its role. I can talk about kind of just some of what it does. And so, well, actually, real quickly. So we talked about it. It's most abundant in glutamate neurons for excitation, but it's also found on interneurons, the mediators between sensory and cortical perception, as well as serotonin. There's inacyl dopamine receptors that that are part of that endocannabinoid system, serotonin as well, and various other ones. They're
What brain regions are those receptors primarily found in?
So they're usually found. So you can find them anywhere in the cerebellum, the basal ganglia, the hippocampus, the amygdala. Those are the ones that have the.
Where are they primarily located in? Like there's like for every receptor, it seems like, at least that I've come across, like it seems like there is certain brain regions that it seems to be primarily utilized in and seem to be its main purpose, for like for regulating and controlling.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. I mean,
is there a region, like regions that's more that it's noticeably more abundant in, or do you know? I mean, that's a pretty specific question, so I wouldn't necessarily expect you to know it, but
I can tell you about the specific functions it has within those particular ones, but
okay.
so I guess one of the big ones we can kind of talk about is the mood, and as well as its role in the HPA axis, so the hypothalamic pituitary axis, and its role in stress regulation. So this is really interesting because anandamide is a really big cofactor in the feeling of being relaxed, and this is just what's naturally produced within our body. And when cortisol gets spiked, what happens is that it actually deletes anandamide. So it actually ups the production of the extinction of anandamide. So I think that's done by uh, the FAW enzyme that degrades anandamide, and so it like orders up more of these enzymes and rapidly depletes anandamide. And the reason why that's the case is that anandamide is a really big factor in recovering from fear responses. And so if you're in the moment, having a very stressful situation and you're not scared at all, everything's fine because your anandamide levels are having a great time. You feel blissful, you feel relaxed, you feel social, like everything's going to be fine. The problem with that is that obviously you're not going to, give the amount of attention and focus necessary for that stressful environment that you're in. And so it deletes it really, really fast. And so continuous spikes in our cortisol levels is actually going to deplete the overall levels of anandamide within the HPA axis, within the hypothalamus, and as well as the amygdala. There's a lot of connections. Those are pretty interwoven, and so it has these delete mechanisms that are in place during like high spikes of cortisol. And so continuous high spikes pretty much has major implication for endocannabinoids, mood regulatory processes. And so too much high cortisol can really make you feeling depressed. And obviously there are other effects as to why this is the case, but one of the primary factors in the actual mood of, dealing with the continuous high stress is the lack of anandamide in the body. And so that's really interesting. And yeah. Oh, actually, a really fun one that we could talk about is
I
what's
did
up?
find the answer to the question, my question, if you
Oh,
want to
yeah.
hear it. Basically, it looks like that while they are found all throughout the body,
Mhm.
um, CB1 is more abundant within the brain,
Oh, yes, I need to talk about that.
and then CB1 receptors within the brain are primarily concentrated in the cerebellum, basal ganglia, and
Mhm.
hippocampus and cortex.
Yeah.
And then CB2 receptors are primarily
And
found
immune
in
cells and cytokines.
peripheral
Yeah.
tissues,
Mhm.
tonsils, white blood cells.
Yeah, spleen, other places like that,
Yeah.
yeah. I definitely did forget to touch on that. I was planning on getting there, but then I kinda got off a little track got off track a little
My
bit.
fault.
All good. Oh, that's actually,
That
something
got us back on track. That
back on
counts
track.
in my favor.
Yeah, so I really wanna dive deep a little bit more into its, regulatory role, and one of the most fascinating ones that I am, kinda came across was the fact that it has major implications for how our blood-brain barrier functions. So
Mm.
it pretty much keeps the blood-brain barrier, if you didn't know, only allows very small particles to pass through while keeping out a lot of big particles that could damage a lot of the functions that the, brain, does, obviously. So it's really important that stays
It's like
intact.
a selective filter as to what can actually
Mhm.
cross.
Yeah. So at all of, like, the junctions where, and I can give you specifics about the junctions if you want, but pretty much there are these junctions in this, barrier that, allow that pretty much regulate and decide what allows what they allow to pass through the blood-brain barrier. And that is actually mediated by, CB1 receptors in that area, and so that's really important. And, yeah, so it's and hold on, trying to put this all together. So, yes. So, what they noticed in mice was that so we do know, just a little bit of context, I haven't gotten into this yet, but the endocannabinoid system is very, influenced in, like, socio-behavioral, outputs. And so how we socialize is actually like talking with people, like what we're doing right now, is actually producing high levels of anandamide. And it's
Ooh.
and so that's why sometimes when people smoke THC,
So if I could I inject myself with some anandamide and just become social with myself?
well, actually, they've actually done that. They've created synthetic anandamide drugs that pretty much there's like the blocking of anandamide, and there's also like the help like
Stimulation.
stimulation of anandamide, and then you can also combine the 2. You can have, like, the inhibition of, like, the FAW enzyme that breaks it down, and as well as giving more in there. And what they noticed is that there was a dramatic increase in the ability of, like, getting rid of social anxiety. Um, but one interesting crossover is that they noticed in mice that social defeat, and so, like, like losing their status, for example, or, like, having some sort of that type of
Yeah, so you
interaction.
carried a whole lot more weight because of that.
Mhm. Yeah. What they noticed is that there was a 30% decrease in the integrity of the blood-brain barrier, uh, because of the lower levels of, um, um, anandamide and, 2-AG within that area. And I'm not exactly, like yeah, roughly around like 30% because of the lack of binding to the astrocytes that have CB1 receptors in the blood-brain barrier that help mediate that kind of cleanup of the larger molecules. And so there seemed to be, which is just really interesting.
Wait, so because of a lower level of social stimulation than what body was used
It was
to.
more so like a higher level of social stimulation, but in a negative manner.
Well, losing social status typically, once that happens, results in a lower level of social stimulation.
Yeah, I
Like,
guess like the actual like social stimulation, like the context of like socializing, like stimulation to go and socialize, that very much decreases, and that is probably somehow connected also with like the cortisol release and then deletion of anandamide.
right.
But yeah, so
I'm just curious, like why that degradation in the blood-brain barrier happens as a result of the drop in anandamide,
mhm,
like, and what the reverse of that would be, like if there was an increase in um, anandamide, a sudden increase, like what that would do to the blood-brain barrier.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I I would guess that if you had normal structural integrity, blood-brain barrier, it wouldn't
Captain,
like
structural integrity is compromised.
yeah, exactly, and then, kind of freak out a little bit, and they also noticed, like,
Abandoned ship.
a huge decrease in the a huge increase in the rapid, cognitive decline in mice because of the lower it's actually sorry, not, lower levels the of the interaction of it's actually probably 2AG that's, interacting with the astrocyte CB1 receptors at the blood-brain barrier, and I think it has to do with, like, the way in which the resources are utilized during, social defeat and negative, social stimuli,
Hmm.
and so there's just less integrity because that system isn't being as well regulated as it was before because of, um, what I stated earlier. And then, you talked about how, um, CB2 receptors are most abundant in, like, peripheral tissue and, they're also involved in, like, neuroinflammation as well, and so
As in they cause it or help prevent it? I'm assuming
so
help prevent it.
yes, they help prevent it. So pretty much, when, uh, inflamed cells kinda go crazy, and this is both in, the brain and the periphery, but mainly the majority of it happening in, like, the rest of the body, not the central nervous system.
I'm just picturing a little cell right now with an angry face going, glutamate won't stop antagonizing me.
Yeah, exactly, like, they get angry, and, these inflamed, cells can really harm, nearby, like, cells and as well as, like, neurons as well, and pretty much flipping on the CB2 receptors and binding to them tells these inflamed, cells to pretty much, "Hey, take a chill pill," okay?
It's
And
gonna be all right, bro. It'll be
yeah,
fine.
it pretty
I
much
need you to calm down.
mhm. In a way, it's almost like they're waiting for that signal. Pretty much, what, uh, the CB2 receptors tell them to do when it binds to them, it's like, "Hey, chill out and start repairing."
So the moral of this story is for those of you out there who are have trouble with being a little bit overexcitable and anxious, you need to go find yourself a stoner friend.
Yes. I mean, genuinely, it's I mean, cannabis, it stimulates a lot of like, even, like, well, the interesting thing about THC is that it obviously does not degrade as fast as an antibiotic, but it replicates its interactions with the body. And so you're having, like I mean, one of the potential
So it interacts similarly
very similarly.
as an anandamide, but because of its different structure,
Mhm.
it stays around longer.
Yeah, it stays around a lot longer. And it's, one of the also things about what they think gives you that high feeling is that because THC binds non-specifically. And so it's pretty much, going through the brain and binding to just about everything that it can.
It's like
And
a
so
mass hippie convention.
Exactly, and so that's why you're like, "Whoa." It's an overactivation of all of these CB1 and CB2 receptors, both in the central nervous system and the body, that's giving you a bunch of, like, crazy feelings, like, it's why oh, well, hold on. Yeah, so pretty much, it's involved in neuroinflammation, but, um, apart from that, we'd also talk about, its role in nociception. So, pretty much, nociception is
I have a
go?
question though.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you think would be the reason why some people might not react well to something like cannabis and the kind of effect, whatever effect it's trying to,
Mm, yeah,
have on your body? Because for me, the few times that I have tried it, I've really, really not liked it at all
mm,
because first off, I'm not a huge fan of anything that clouds my ability to think,
yeah,
but more than that, it made me sick. Like
mm,
it was like it um it felt like it was fighting like my body, like it
yeah,
was like creating some sort of dissonance.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, um, did you have, like, a blunt? Or do you know how, like, you took in the cannabis?
It was somebody's pipe, I think.
Pipe. Okay. Um, well, um, one thing that I forgot to preface with is that everyone's endocannabinoid system does vary a lot, and so it's very particular, and very, like, specific to, genetic predispositions.
Mm,
And so there's a lot of variation, and, it's interesting because I have, a very positive, interaction with cannabis personally.
mm.
I don't have it very often because I need my working memory, and we can get into that a little bit, too, but, like, it's really interesting because say something?
Uh, well, were you gonna move on from that topic, or were you gonna say
No, I
anything?
was gonna continue with that.
Okay, then continue.
Okay. So my sister, I have a very calming it's very it's supposed to, like, like, functionally with what the science says, it's supposed to be very anxiolytic. It's supposed to be like supposed to relieve a bunch of stress. It's supposed to make you like calm down because of its similarity to anandamide and giving you that bliss.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister, she whenever she doesn't smoke anymore, obviously, because it made her very anxious, very anxious. And you have to really wonder, like, okay, why in the world would something that is supposed to replicate the feeling of like um, rest and regulate stress actually be giving you the feeling of stress.
Opposite, yeah.
Yeah, the actual opposite of especially because out of everyone, me and my sister are very genetically similar,
Right.
and both of us are having very different effects. Um, I would say that for her specifically, it was the type of environment she was in. She was always in high stress situations. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, and so
interesting, because could be that could be a connection, because my default state, that it's not a stressed
yeah,
state for me.
it's highly alert.
It's very like, yeah, I mean, it's alert, and it's
Mhm.
like it's used to being very on the edge
Yeah.
of its seat, kind
Mhm.
of, and not so much uh used to relaxing while awake,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
Um, and I feel like that probably tells people too much that they should know about me, but
Now we're getting up close and personal here.
um, but I feel like maybe if your system is used to states of high, like adrenaline and whatnot, uh, and that's kind of its default. I wonder
Mhm.
if it's simply a matter of the two states fighting each other, like the fact that you have a higher adrenaline like threshold or baseline,
Mhm.
than your other system, and if it's simply that's the dissonance, or if it's the um, a result of maybe long-term periods of stress causing actual changes in the neurological capabilities of that system or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that if you're put in like, if that's your norm and that is what, is natural to you, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna be thrown out of balance. And that is, while there's, somewhat of a suppression of, like a fear response, that doesn't mean that it is going to actually fully suppress it.
So almost the fact that we're not as anxious as we normally are is making us more anxious.
Potentially.
Like the being out of a norm.
Mhm.
Because like if you don't deal with like high anxiety often, then being anxious would be abnormal for you.
Yes.
And so if the goal of this is homeostasis, then um then it pushing you back to non-stressed state or a non excited
Mhm.
state, would feel more like a norm for
Yeah.
you, and but if it's attempting to push your system into a mm, globally normal state, not an individually normal state, and your individual norm is way more accustomed to being excited,
Yeah.
in an excitatory state, then that could kind of be actually a little anxiety
Yeah.
inducing.
And this isn't incredibly, like, mechanistic, but I also really think it's, hugely about the while there's I can get into, like, um, why I think, like, neurologically or physiologically that, there could be some, like, variation in, like, the actual, like, uh, way it, makes you feel. Um, I do think that a lot of it, has to do with the environment and your mindset going into it. And because I know for me personally, there have been times when I have gotten high, and usually, for me, I'm a 5. I'm very introspective, and the my ability to socially interact with people is fine. It's okay, but that's kind of my baseline state, and that's where I find myself, really enjoying cannabis is, by myself, usually every once in a while,
Okay, because
and
when I wasn't smoking it, a couple times I did. It was usually social,
yeah.
and everybody annoyed me that much more.
Yeah, that was the same with, my sister Faith, was that it was always in, like, a social context,
Yeah.
and I think she also did it too much, and so what happened was, I also think that well, what's interesting about, cannabis is that pretty much what's gonna happen is that if THC is just binding to all of these receptors, pretty much what that tells your brain is that you producing the normal level of endocannabinoids is too much. And so what it's gonna do is it's gonna lower the amount of endocannabinoids that are produced within the brain. And that is not a good thing. And it recovers quickly if you stop smoking. But during that transition period, it's really bad. It can have like pretty detrimental effects on like mood and like sleep wake cycles, especially. And like your circadian rhythm can get really dysfunctional if you like have been taking cannabis for a while and then stop. It's gonna like have major effects on sleep and as well as like anxiety because the levels of anandamide in your and the fear centers of the brain are going to be reduced to a
Yeah,
heightened
it's
degree.
kind of the same with any um, long-term stimulation of any
Hmm.
neurotransmitter.
Yeah.
Like that's gonna that lack of balance is gonna
Hmm.
end up causing an
and
issue.
and there's also the like the tolerance. So I there's this isn't exactly specifically like your situation or your past situations, but like the correlation between like the lower levels of endocannabinoids being produced that are going to regulate your functions, plus your that you're going to become desensitized to the concentrations of THC you've been taking, and so you're going to have this dual kind of like negative effect where pretty much you're not producing enough, and the amount that you're taking needs to constantly increase. Otherwise, you're not going to be getting the high effect that you want. And so that combination, I will say, has really done a lot of terrible things to a lot of different people because, you know, while cannabis itself is definitely not the most addicting substance out there, you can chronically use it, and you can use it as a crutch because it's a very like if it's like very if it works for you, it become a very useful crutch over time.
Same as, a lot of other
Yeah,
things like
exactly.
nicotine,
Hmm.
stimulants, anything else can be a crutch.
Exactly. And well, I mean, I will say what is nice is that like opioids are much more addicting, and they also cause respiratory failure.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and so that's kind of the main cause of opioid overdose.
There's a fundamental component though to humanity that I think that um, people are going to do what it is that they want to do,
Yeah.
and they are going to, even if you make something really difficult for them, they're going to, because of the way that we work, like if we're needing a crutch for something,
Hmm.
then we're going to look for the first available
Yeah.
crutch. And so people like, and this is kind of where my problem with regulation of those kind of things comes in. It's like, it's not that I think that like that stuff can't be harmful.
Hmm.
I think it
Yeah.
can, just like a lot of things. But I think that it's better to ensure that the crutches that people use are high quality
Yeah.
and are regulated as far as that goes
Hmm.
than it is to try and fail to take that away from them and result in them getting a much more unregulated,
Yeah.
product, and potentially even choosing to go with something different or stronger or worse.
Which is 100% what's going to happen with cannabis starting September. Is I forget which senator it was in the Texas Senate, but he said this is giving the cartels a free gift because now the people who aren't approved for medical cannabis are, which is probably going to be the majority of the millions of people that use cannabis in Texas, are going to be getting it from not well regulated places that are not going to be your local.
Yeah, you think you're going to stop people from using cannabis?
Yeah.
You're not.
No.
That's not going to do jack shit to it.
Hmm.
What it is going to do is now means that the dark net markets, black markets,
Yeah.
the uh your local drug dealers, your cartel, like
Hmm.
all of those people now are going to benefit and are going to have an increase in traffic. So you're going to see an increase in the crime profit from that decision, and you are
Hmm.
not going to see much of a decrease at all in user
Yeah.
usage.
And I mean, your point about the cartel, there was a really big bust a couple years ago on like their pretty much they had this like giant field in the middle of this like national like park that was all just like the cartels like marijuana growing fields. And I think there was some opium as well. But pretty much after they busted them, it was a long whole like interaction and fight between the cartel and the police. And then at the end, they got the cannabis and the chemicals they were using to keep the pests off were like the worst
Mm.
possible things you could be putting on, like worse than like herbicides and pesticides that we
Mhm.
all kind of scream about today, which are bad. I will admit there are better ways to do it, but these I wish I remembered the name of the chemical, but it's like banned like pretty much everywhere, and it works well to keep the bugs off, but it's terrible for you. And you're gonna be getting varying levels of concentration, super high levels of concentration, you're not gonna be able to, like, really know what's in your product and what's been used. And that's a really big problem, especially when it's gonna be millions of
Mhm.
people that are gonna be getting this product, millions of people that are gonna be fined if a cop catches them on the
Yeah.
street, walking on the street high, they're cooked. They're done for. You're gonna get up to, like, a $500 fine. And people who sell cannabis
Maybe that's why they're doing it, so they can charge people for it.
and yeah, I mean, yeah, pretty much it gives the Texas Medical Institute a monopoly over, this $8 billion revenue that happens
Right.
in Texas. And it's
And
horrible.
what's, um, even more
Mm. Way too dangerous. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. You yeah. Mhm. Yeah. 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 Mhm. Yes. Of course. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Absolutely. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Well, I mean, along the same lines, they did it I'm gonna talk about 2 studies. They first they did a study on what the actual gateway to harder drugs is, because, it's been reiterated so many times that marijuana is the gateway drug into doing harder substances. Exactly, that's just been, like, pushed since the '60s from Nixon's war on drugs, and that is just what they found is that that is just absolutely not true. The number one factor was, connections to the black market, and it was the ability to well, pretty much the it was just yeah, that instead of it wasn't cannabis, getting it from your local, like, shop that sells it, it was the actual, like, connections to you and, like, drug dealers and some more organized crime, faculties that were administering, like, marijuana, but it wasn't the people who were getting it from the shop, it was the people who were getting it from, uh, you know, illegal sellings of that then went to that. Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. And, along what you're talking about, like, from a parenting aspect, for me, I would rather my kids do can't, like, smoke cannabis with me knowing than me not knowing, because then we can actually talk about regulating it. And, I've looked at the science. Mhm. Yeah. Christian nationalist conservative. Yeah. Of those types. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. They're really good salespeople. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. 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 Mhm. I mean, yeah, yeah, 100%. I mean, the the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety, it's connection, right? And the more I can connect, the more I can connect with people and spread awareness and just keep it in the open, the more they will naturally want to regulate themselves on this product because the majority of like kind of that dopamine reward you get from smoking this behind your parents' back, is actually a pretty major factor in like the actual liking of that substance. Mhm. And, like, I know for me, like, when I was, like, maybe, like, 12, 13, I didn't really know the mechanisms behind this, but I knew that it was because my parents were so strict on video games that I had this overwhelming desire to always play video games. Yeah, and I was aware of it, and I was like, "I don't think I can escape from this unless I had full access and free access to all the video games that I would want." And
when I was young, I would sneak out at night and go and try and do something crazy. Like I would get the ideas like, oh, I'm gonna um tonight I'm gonna go see if I can find um a store that's open that will let me buy something my parents wouldn't let me buy, or I'm gonna go. There's one time that I had plans to like break into a buy, and like that's something I'm okay with like thinking about now because it was long ago when I was a kid, Um, but I would drive make and I would go and contemplate what I was gonna do. The Whenever I would into these really scrappy, like dangerous situations and like my
Up and everything. And I just remember like finding that so fun and thrilling. And I wonder if it's because I mean, I always knew that I did that because of like my lack of freedom, but I wonder if it was that kind of inability to have something that I really wanted and then the anticipation of it over the course of like the day or days, that was leading up to it, final decision to like to do it, getting away with it, and everything that would like that kind of led to those big dopamine rushes that I was missing because I didn't have the regular dopamine rush enough, from being able to make choices. I would assert that gratefulness is no different than satisfaction. Express, yeah. There is something I will say that is innately inbuilt and satisfying into who we are as humans that desires to not only make our own choices and like express ourselves and want to do what we want to do, but also wants to deal with the consequences. Like, like we want to have to deal with the outcome of those choices. And whether it be good or bad, like there's a component that just like it can't be transferred. Like it's not a transfer learning like scenario. You can't just adopt everything from your parents. Like there's something really, really, strongly built into us that needs the ability to make a choice and see and experience the outcome and then have to navigate that. I think in a way it's like thrilling for us, like that experience of overcoming, 'cause I know that for me, whenever I would get into scrappy, like there was one time that I was when I was young, again, young and dumb, but like I was at one point that I was hiding from the police, and I had to like get away from the police, and I did, but that situation was so thrilling. It was a choice that I made, and and I came very close to paying, some severe consequences. I got away with it, but it was informative. Like, it was a really, like, it scared me, but it was like, also, I'd never experienced anything like that before. So, like,
I've never done it before because I think when I had those thoughts, I was a little too old to be able to run away from the police. There's too many detrimental implications from life. You can't go to jail.
yeah.
You've got too much to do. But
Well, they didn't even actually see me. I got away from them without them seeing me. But
But what they don't realize is that each new person, no matter like even if people grow up in the same environment, the perspectives on that information is different. And through that kind of like that I don't know exactly the right word for it, that integration,
interpretive lens.
yeah, the interpretive lens of what you have or what you got has to be expressed and projected into the world when you fully consolidate that beginning of the self. And I think it's actually genetic, the ability to take what we have and to kind of project those shadows that lie within our subconscious and then contend with them. And then I think that's why, well, obviously there's developmental reasons why there's progression of things, but I think that's also why that there is kind of less of an inhibition on executive function in younger kids. Is that because if they were too well regulated, then we'd be way too robotic. That's something we have to really consider, is that the inhibitory process is really have to do with just the like physiological development, not psychological development. And that's for a reason, because you want to take the sum of your past behaviors and then express that and contend with it for the construction of your own inhibition for yourself. Yeah, which I wish more people would like understand that, being rebellious and finding what lies within the recesses of your mind and then projecting that in a way that feels right, preferably not illegally, but projecting in a way that
Allows
feels
you to
right,
learn.
allows you to learn instead of like, you can sometimes feel like they're really learning and that they're really progressing as a person, they're healing from trauma, and then all of a sudden they're put in an environment that brings about that past, and all of a sudden they realize that they don't have any inhibition of that environment because the way that they healed wasn't through wrestling with that perspective lens that they had that shaped their experience. They ran away from it. Like I've said for a very long time that if your self healing journey isn't painful, and you're not learning how to heal from your how to like better yourself, you're learning how to run away from yourself. And I think that's a really big distinction of why people actually do become robotic, is because they didn't actually contend with what they had. They become robotic because they allowed that complex inhibition to manifest without the exploration in the early years. And that's
Robotic in what way?
robotic in the sense that they are the sum of their past behavioral inputs that happened in their childhood, and
With no ability to change it.
with no ability to change it because of fear.
Right.
And they ran away from it. And so what happens is that you have like almost like a dissociation of your adult self from the majority of who you are, which is your reinforced from
Is
your
like
childhood.
completely unknown.
Exactly.
It's like something that's not even your reasoning for wanting to do things or for reacting to something is like completely foreign and alien to you because of the fact that that stuff is not something that has been processed or utilized and or went on for so long that your lens shifted the information to now be inaccurate, um, the which I mean happens to everyone to an extent, but the more that you process and the more that you distill stuff and reflect on it and discover your own internal workings, the more accurate that information is likely to be, because you will discover your own biases and be able to correct for your own biases when you are consolidating that information. And that's something that I think you're right. Not a lot of people learn how to do. Like, a lot of people go through their life completely unaware of what makes them tick and the whys behind them. And um, I cannot imagine that. Like, it's a very foreign concept to me. But I can tell because, like, there's a lot of times that I will ask people a question that I would ask myself were I in their situation. They don't know, don't even, haven't even thought about it, like. Mhm. Yeah. Right. Right. Nobody can converse with anybody with a different opinion on something that touches on one of their core values. Hmm. And it doesn't matter if you're like agreeing on everything or not. Like, it's okay. They disagree with me on that. Is that important? Is it an important thing to like discuss, or do we just move past it? Like, okay, well, we could just move past it and continue on with the rest of the conversation. Like, it's people get offended very easily. That does, I'm sure that does help, but right. Actually, the majority of like the stuff that people have an opinion on is stuff that we don't have an opinion on. Like, it's more our opinion is that we don't have an we don't think there is a right answer. And so, right. And even within that, like, our specific biases and our bents tend to be towards different areas, and but that doesn't bother me. Like, if anything, that's makes it something we can actually discuss and talk about, because if all of our opinions were the same, like, we would have nothing to discuss. We'd just be repeating what the other person said. Mhm.
not necessarily like integrating your consciousness that like having another one of you besides the sex and then up until that point. Wondering kind of what our conversations would be like and how you would interact with yourself from another perspective. And
I don't think so. Well, I don't. I think at first you would just end up like saying the exact same thing all the time. But as your experiences diverged and your perspectives started to diverge, that synchronization would would drift away, and you would eventually become two similar but distinct individuals. Like you'd have a similar experience you could relate to. You know, you'd have a you'd have some, you know, intimate knowledge of each other, but you would end up coming at things from a different perspective and angle enough that it would probably make the person pretty interesting to talk to. Why?
well, because I'm so curious as to my actual skill level.
You're fighting you though. Like
Exactly.
what that wouldn't be informative at all.
But it's like shadow boxing, but even better. You know,
It's
I
not
find that
that's
to be
not
so
useful
motivating.
because you don't have a like there's not a skill disparity there.
But I don't
There's
get to see your own weaknesses. You can like see your flaws better. I mean, that's my thing.
I suppose in the same way that a mirror lets you see the zits on your face or like the scars on your, you know, on your. Sure, okay, I could see maybe how that would.
I just think it would be fun, even if it's not like the most important thing for like developing my skills. I just think that'd be so fun. Just, like,
Yeah,
myself.
you could also do the same thing with a video camera.
Yeah. Well, I just want to like immerse myself in myself.
Huh.
I don't know.
The for those that know, which is everyone because they weren't there for it. Conversation he's referring to is one in which uh I we were discussing the idea of what it would be like to be you have the ability to save your own life and extend your life by transferring your consciousness into a clone. Um, Essentially, you know, transferring the exact state that your brain was at when you know you die over to a replica of your body, um, albeit an unused one. But and whether or not that would bother him or not, and then kind of taking those concepts a little further and discussing, okay, well, what if there was a time difference, you know, between your old self dying and your new self, you know, coming alive, or a time difference between like meaning a time difference in that like there's an overlap and your old self was still alive while your new self was also alive, or a different time difference where like your old self died and then there was like a bit of time, and that implications that that has for us or lack thereof, and what that says about our our ideas of self and like who we are and where what about us is important, you know, and reason I brought it up was because that used to be something that I was really uncomfortable with, an idea that I did not like at all. And I was like, I don't know how I could ever get used to that. Like, but the more that I thought about it, I started delving into those concepts of like, well, what really am I? What is important to preserve? Like, and all these kind of things, and like the choice, you know, choices that I'd be making there, and like the payout, you know, and whatnot. And um, the more I started not hating the idea as much until I got to the point where I actually didn't care. Like, it didn't bother me at all. As long as I was still around, at the end of it, I think I'd be like, whatever method that ended up happening, it would be okay. My main concern would just be like my lack of control while I was, um, you know, dead, if there was a time disparity there. Yeah, I mean, it's essentially kind of similar to if you were to lose an arm and replace it with a robotic one, or something like that, even more natural. Um, the There's something I was going to say there. I don't remember. It'll
Oh,
come back to me.
that's sad. That's sad.
Um,
Oh, well, while you're waiting on that, if if you're still sticking around from our talk on the endocannabinoid system, what I wanted to say real quickly is, we've gone over the majority of the mechanisms, but I also wanted to say what you can do to actually keep your regulator balanced, that and one of the primary ways to do that is through amino acid intake as well as like essential fatty acids. So like anandamide and 2-AG are actually produced, or the nutrients that they need to be produced is through omega 6s. And what's interesting about that is that an imbalance of omega 6s and omega 3s actually, like if you have like the majority of the American diet is, like 20 to 1 in omega 6s to omega 3s, like it's terrible when that's supposed to be like a 1-to-1 ratio.
mm,
And the best thing you can do is to bring that back to its like 1-to-1 ratio, instead of, because you would think that, oh, more omega 6s actually produce more endocannabinoids because that's actually what they're derived from. Well, what actually happens is that there becomes an imbalance in the balancer of the body.
mm,
And
that doesn't sound good.
no, that doesn't sound good at all. So one of the main reasons why omega 3s and omega 6s, balancing that is so huge, is because it is actually facilitating the homeostatic processes by which the endocannabinoid system normalizes all of your physiological functions in the body and in the brain.
Hmm.
And so, and also that's why, you feel more regulated, you feel better, you feel like you have a mood boost, you feel like you're able to like sleep better, when you take, you like omega 3 supplements, you add like fish, different nuts to your diet that have that, is because a lot of that is because of your endocannabinoid system that's actually getting the stable nutrients that it needs from the balance of omega
Man,
6s and 3s.
that's nuts.
Yeah, literally. Yes. Take as many nuts as possible. Well, I just wanted to throw that in
Yeah,
there.
that's good information.
Yeah.
Uh, One thing that I was going to say about our conversation
Yeah.
earlier, well, this wasn't the thing that I was trying to remember, but there's a roach right there. God. Was that the one nice thing about being able to make another version of myself? In fact, this is branching into the area of cloning, so there being more than one of me.
Yeah.
which is not something that I would, in a grand scale, that I think I would like very much, simply because I think it would degrade my unique presence.
Mm.
But the nice thing about that would be that there are so many things that I can't get done because there's not enough of me.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
That would make there enough of me.
And you feel like you can trust yourself too.
Yeah, I mean, we're all on the same page,
Mhm.
We're all the
That's
same goals.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it would be I know we did touch on this last time we had this conversation. I think also, like, having, like connection between all of your clones, where you pretty much are able to, like, see into their brain states, and they see into yours, pretty much, and so you have, like, this, like, almost, like, meta consciousness of, like, all of your selves that are out in the world doing their own things. You can kind of all, like, keep in touch with the information you have,
Right.
and you can, like, coordinate
The
better.
Borg.
Yes.
We are Borg.
I
You
think
will be assimilated.
well, I think that's, actually something that can potentially happen with Neuralink. I mean, right now they're moving on to, like, phase 2 trials of
You're gonna really freak people out. Most people don't like the Borg.
no, but well, what's great, so they've been mainly focused on, like, ALS, and, people who can't, like who are, like, paralyzed from the neck down, giving them, like, Neuralinks to be able to, like, interface with computers to give them just more access to do things. And now they're moving on to the visual
I
cortex.
actually had an idea that it turns out is something that they're actively working on.
Ooh.
But it was an idea for giving people who are paralyzed because of a spinal injury,
Yeah.
giving them their um, usage of their limbs back and their ability to connect with the rest of their body.
Mm.
And it was basically by creating a sensory bridge um, between the stimuluses that were being received um, from the brain down the spine to the point
Mhm.
of the break,
Yeah.
and using like the uh, the word I'm looking for, it is these really thin sheets of um,
That's, I mean, because that's that that
That's again, I cannot remember for the life of me what it's called, but that material that's it's like more conductive than gold, um, and is the thing that allows for them to even pick up on and detect such weak signals. Um, the main difficulty in this process is A, reducing interference, and B, um, getting enough meaningful uninterfered signal that you can distinguish the different signals that are being sent.
Yeah.
And because it's very easy for things to, you know, sensors to be interfered with,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to really, really detailed electrical,
Yeah.
impulses and stuff.
Well, when it comes to like that really highly detailed mechanisms within our body, I almost want to say that the best way to do it would be to they well those signals those connections were obviously there before at some point. The body intrinsically knew how to establish those connections, and those become disrupted, and obviously became paralyzed. But I wonder if, uh, creating the right electrical environment and then reverting those nerves back to their base state in which they can actually explore that same neurodevelopmental pathway that they did before. And so you kind of have like in the I think it was the second, like Andrew Garfield, maybe the first one. Who was the lizard one? Was that the first or second of the Spider-Man movies?
Oh, the lizard man was the second.
Second, yes, okay. You know how, like, when he cut off his arm
Wait,
or no, not when he cut off
wait, what? Wait, hold up a second. Lizard man. It
lizard
was,
scientist, yeah.
yeah, that was the.
Was that the first one?
How many of them? There were two, right?
I think they
There were only two,
yeah, I think 2
right?
Andrew Garfield ones.
There was the one with the lizard, and there was the one with all the with the Green Goblin,
Oh, maybe the
Hobgoblin or
yeah.
whatever. Um,
Well,
so it was the first one then,
first one, okay, yeah.
because yeah,
So you know how, like, he didn't have an arm, and when he grew it when he figured out how to grow it
regenerated
back, it grew back as kind of like a baby, which was really surprising because it's really only now that we're uncovering kind of these pre um planned kind of ways of communicating with the cells to do what they did before. And so, like, reestablish that fundamental development. And so it's actually, it was what they did in that movie was actually very scientifically accurate, where you would have pretty much if you were to like, you know, learn or tell it how to connect and when to stop connecting, to make sure that it's all correlated. It knows how to do that intrinsically, and so bringing it back to its baseline state, maybe with that conductive material, allowing for those electrical signals to like really understand themselves, because there's obviously like a stretch because of how usually they're older, and so I could see that where you actually like learn how to tell the nerves themselves how to reestablish that connection, so you don't have to like really micromanage and probably will mess it up because
graphene sheets.
graphene sheets.
That's the
Okay,
name of it. Thank you.
nice.
Okay, thank you,
So
brain.
these, yes.
Finally,
Mhm,
graphene sheets. That's the name of the material, and it's you can have single layer graphene sheets, and like basically
mhm,
the thinner that the sheet
yeah,
is, the more conductive
yeah.
it is.
I think amplifying well, I mean, you'll see in when you observe like in embryonic development, you'll see or like just like young neurodevelopment, you'll see like signals being transmitted, and those signals will tell the cells pretty much how to connect and respond to that electrical field that the cells send out.
I wonder. It'll be interesting
Okay.
if we actually get this technology developed to the point that it is useful in rehabilitating people. It'll be interesting to see what the result of that is at the spot of injury, because I wonder if the fact that those signals are now working again together, if that could potentially stimulate the reconnecting or establishment of new connections that would eventually connect those pathways
Yeah.
together
Mm-hmm.
again, so allowing for the person to move without
Mm-hmm.
the device.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a possibility.
I think so.
You know?
I actually would say that, I mean, it might be a little bit difficult to remove the graphene sheet, but
I'd say you could leave that in. That's
yeah, you could leave that in. But for other things, like like one of the major problems when it
I
comes
mean,
to
but
like
if you could put the graphene sheet in, you can take it out. I mean, but I
yeah.
just don't know if there'd be a point to taking it out other than
Mm-hmm.
If there was some potential
Side
for,
effect over long-term periods of time. Maybe, who knows? Maybe your immune cells will attack it and it'll be bad. But like you said, there might not.
It's so small, I can't
Yeah.
even imagine.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, one of the major issues when it comes to like the ability to heal is your cells rely on the information from other cells to tell it how it should function. And so when there's a disconnectivity within that, then there's going to be obvious dysfunction, deregulation. I mean, that's one of the things with cancer, right? Is that the problem is that cancer cells stop communicating with the body as a collective and they start to do their own thing. It's not necessarily like cancer cells are bad and they're out to get everything. No, they're not working a part of the whole because their connections
What
are set up correctly.
analogies can we draw from this?
I wonder, I mean, there's an interesting thing about everyone kind of playing their part, and when you're not given a part, when that collective stops communicating with you, that cancer cell now becomes a subjective self, and it's going to almost be in like this cancer stem state that is going to then organize itself based on what it knows, which is exactly what your other cells know how to do, which is to take nutrients and get as big as get as rich as possible. Like stem cells. Usually, what they do is that they take information from the cells around them and then work to establish their role in that cellular ensemble. And what happens with cancer cells is the exact opposite of that, where it's these cells that actually don't receive that information because of dysfunction within particular you know uh, collectives. That's when they start to become very life threatening. And what's interesting is that I forget exactly who did this, but there's like there
Like
was
every cell wants to be an alpha.
yeah until it
Like everybody wants to be their own daddy.
yeah it's like, well, it's more so like if no one's telling you what to do, you're like, well, I'm gonna do my own thing. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm me, and I'm gonna make sure that it's only me that's important.
Right. Well, I
Because
mean, that's what kind of my point is,
yeah
that if everybody is looking out for themselves because nobody's looking out for them, they're trying to get other cells,
yeah
to do that, then that means the other cells are going to be looking out for themselves
hmm
too,
yeah
but yet they still want to be in a pack, and so like you've got like
exactly.
this, you end up with this like giant alpha pack of cells.
Well, what's interesting is that in like metatumors, so pretty much they're like tumors that grow big enough, like multiple tumors that grow big enough to actually start communicating with each other, and they form like this larger tumor that becomes like one pretty much, and it's really wacky stuff. But pretty much they're establishing a connection, and they're now integrating a collective just with the cells that are similar to them. And so now you're establishing like meta communication with other tumors that weren't able to connect with, your body's
That's
pathways.
disturbing.
Very, yeah, very disturbing.
Reminds me too much of like The Last of Us, or like
Mm.
other like fungi controlled
Yeah.
things, you
Yeah.
know, like
Mhm.
just this concept of something turning into getting infected with something that turns it the whole being into something else, you
I mean,
know?
I think film to some degree does reflect reality. I mean, there was fungus that control ants, you know?
Right, well, that was what it was built. I mean,
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Last of Us was
Mhm. The
made off of
cordyceps
was like the whole
cordyceps
concept of yeah.
mushrooms, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think that if our, core or if our body temperature was actually maybe naturally at, like, 103, for example, like, like in The Last of Us where, global warming, was on the rise and everyone's bodies warmed up and adapted to, like, get to around 103, where that's where the mushrooms really thrived.
Is that what
And
happened?
yeah, I'm pretty sure that was kind of the whole theme of it was because of the core
In the
temperature.
game or in the movie?
I think the
Or
movie,
the TV show, sorry.
yeah, the show. That's what was explained to me.
Because I don't remember that being part of the TV
Oh,
show.
maybe it wasn't.
Could
Um,
just be
that could be
misremembering.
that could be something else that I saw potentially, but like well, I'm just saying like in general, if
So if we were at 103.
yeah, potentially you could have actual mushrooms corrupt and control your
Ugh.
mind. Yeah, yeah, and that concept was instilled in my head, and then I did shrooms, and I will say like it was weird. It was like I was convincing myself that there was actually mushrooms controlling my brain. It was part of this whole, like, really trippy experience, I will say, because I was like, "I need hot water. I need to warm myself. I'm so cold." And I was like, "What the hell am I doing? I need to, like, get." And then I, like, put on, like, really cold water. It was just like, "No, I'm not gonna let the mushrooms control me." And it was pretty funny. Yeah,
No.
yeah.
I will not be controlled by the mushroom's desire for warm water.
Yeah, and then I sat there in the tub thinking about, like, the evolutionary, process by which politics takes place, like, and fitting in that, which is interesting, because it's just like to them, it's just like the normal, like, evolutionary dominance game theory hierarchy that they're playing, and it's like, well, they're the most successful, and,
And to
everything else
me,
is fine.
it's like the most unevolved. Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah, potentially. It's just like it sucks because there's so many tech billionaires that if they were just a little more integrated within the collective instead of their own, like,
Yeah.
self-preservation greed,
Yeah.
we'd be living in a much different
I.e., if we
culture.
didn't totally revolve around capitalism, but
Yeah. Yep, yep, exactly, it's, ins instead of the state controlling the affairs of the people.
how about the people have an affair with the state?
Yes, that sounds better instead of, like, businesses, instead of, like, monopolies, you know?
Right.
Let's kiss our politicians and make sure they know our passions and so that they,
Mm.
take that and reinstill it into, like, the actual well, it's interesting because the 60% of Texans think that cannabis should be recreational.
I definitely thought we were going in the direction of kiss their politicians. But go ahead.
Well, uh, just, just to show how little the actual, like,
Yeah.
politicians reflect the actual, like, what the people want. 60% of Texans think that cannabis should be recreational. That is a
Why does that
obvious
even
majority, and yet they're just gonna, like, just because they decide, like, every single Republican, like, all 87 of them, all 86 actually, there was one who didn't, only one, who all voted for, uh, just illegal, like, just making cannabis illegal completely in Texas, unless for medical purposes. Who because it makes them money.
doesn't make ugh,
If you look at who's funding them, it makes sense.
I that kind of stuff, just like we need a new system.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I think it's just because people are just so distracted. They're so distracted that things are happening right under their noses, and so they're not gonna feel like, the ability to act as a collective.
Well, it's like, I mean, if I were a politician playing that game, like this point, I'd be like, what are they gonna do about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like there's
Yeah.
nothing because they might think that something is the case. They might be angry about it. They might stomp their feet, you know,
Yeah.
but ultimately, are they going to think that enough to be able to make other people think that and take any sort of action? Like,
Yeah.
no, people don't do that.
Mhm.
And, people are so overwhelmed by the amount of information and their difficulty to disseminate it and to figure out what is true and what's not true,
Yeah.
that oftentimes they don't know if they can trust their own
Yeah.
instincts and perspectives
Mhm.
on things, and they don't know where to find truth. And so um, while they might suspect something, it's like nobody's going to put their life on the line or their livelihood for a suspicion.
Yeah.
um, and so as a politician, I'd be like, let them think that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
doesn't really affect me in any way, other than unless I'm trying to like get reelected and I depend on their votes for that.
It the state elections and local elections always really made no sense to me because how are so many people so unhappy with what the majority of these politicians are doing, yet none of them like, there's no fluidity, there's no dynamics within the, like, the interchanging of the politicians. Like, it's been the same people for as long as I can remember, and maybe there's a little variation on, like, who gets in Congress and who gets in the Senate, but, like, Greg Abbott, how long has he been in there? Like, since as long as I remember,
There are
it's been Greg Abbott.
two conclusions that I can come to as to why the government does not seem to change with the people's feelings and opinions. A, it's that the more conspiracy route, that nothing
Vote doesn't actually matter.
a vote doesn't actually particularly matter anymore. And I say that's a possibility. I don't know if it's likely, but like
Yeah.
it's a possibility. And then B, that nobody who's worth their weight in salt wants to become a politician because
Yeah.
they see how terrible the system is and how futile that would be,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
nobody wants to deal with that. And so the people that are actually would be worthwhile as having to have in there
Yeah.
are too smart to do it. Like,
Mhm.
you know,
And, one of the primary ways you get elected is through, like, like funders and lobbyists who want you to do specific things. And if you go against that, well, you're not gonna get enough publicity to be elected
right.
again. And so you kind of have to conform to the system and what the kind of the capitalist businesses kind of want you to do in order for legislation to benefit their purposes. And I think that's exactly what's happening with the medical institutions in Texas is that they're lobbying against the recreational use of cannabis so that they have a monopoly over an $8 billion industry.
And that's one thing that I've um again, tend to take a neutral stance on him in general, because I wasn't a particular fan of him from the beginning, but I think he's done some good things. But that is one thing about Trump that I find interesting, is that he didn't get into politics through the traditional lobbying and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did some of that, but like he already had money. Like the
Yeah.
majority of probably what he used to fund things probably came from his own business he had already established. Now, the
Mhm.
ethical nature of those businesses, I have no idea. But
Not a lot of
my
taxes paid on
my
them.
point is like that um he didn't make he didn't rely on doing things for other people
Yeah.
in order to get into his position.
Mhm.
It doesn't look like.
Yeah.
It looks like he pretty much relied on the stuff he had done for himself to get in that position,
Mhm.
which I personally find more trustworthy. I'd much rather deal with somebody's specific selfish desires than their secondary and
Yeah.
tertiary other people's selfish desires.
Yeah. It he definitely is an interesting character. I was more pro Trump, um, back in the first term, I will say. Um, that's just because of the environment I grew up in.
Sure.
Um, I know things take a lot it takes a lot to change things in a forever non-changing system, and so I don't blame him for a lot of the issues and roadblocks that he's gonna potentially come across because no one else has tried to overcome these
I mean,
issues in the first place.
he's done
you know?
more than the bar is really, really low.
Really low.
But
Yeah. And
he
so
is currently past the
Mhm.
bar. So
yeah, and I am curious if what he's going to do is he going to cater towards the tech billionaires and make sure that they're instilled within kind of like the process so that because he's a businessman.
Yeah, I'm
That's something that I'm worried
wondering
about
what his
specifically.
effect is on capitalism is going to be,
Mhm.
because capitalism as a whole is not good for our country. Like,
Yeah.
it's something that is we could patch and we could like work with for a bit longer, but as
Yeah.
we society continues to develop, we're gonna like get those more and more unstable components and
Mhm.
disparities between um the people that have money, this ability to make money, and the people that don't have money's ability to make money.
Yeah.
And there that's always going to be the case with capitalism. And so I'm curious if, as a businessman, if he's going to choose to look past his own interests, which I don't see is very
I mean,
likely, but would be nice if he did. But like if he's going to do stuff that is actually good, regardless of whether or not it reinforces capitalism, or if he's
mhm.
just going to choose to kind of work on the components that affect the business structure.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, if you watch his inauguration, it's just him doing his speech and just a line of billionaires. Like all just the biggest billionaires just right behind him. It's just like I don't at first I was like, "Oh, well, maybe this is
Like
kind of
a
like a."
bodybuilding like stage, like
Yeah.
with except billionaires. Like,
Exactly, and it's like, to some degree, I understand that because, well, you wanna be able to regulate the most influential people in this capitalist society.
you need
But
money and skilled people to do that.
yeah,
And
or is it I just don't know if it's him really putting his foot down on them or them putting his foot down their foot down on him.
putting his foot down on him.
Yeah, I well, it's
They
just
could be putting his own foot on him. Yeah.
yeah, potentially, I mean, yeah. I mean, uh, it's currently American politics is so complicated because I don't know if there's the illusion of getting things done while the system is falling apart, or if there's actually some at least symptom suppressing stuff that's happening on a baseline level. And I would say on the AI front, they're making great progress. And Saudi Arabia's deal
Yeah.
with AI in the East.
I guess that is the
We'll
question,
see.
is like, whether are they going to be able to take steps that put us in a position to be able to make
Mhm.
long-term changes in the
Yeah,
future, or is it going to be simply stopgap measures that
yeah.
slow the bleeding?
I mean, I know we're headed towards more like digital currency centric, just centralized or decentralized type of global currencies,
I don't
which,
know if something can be considered decentralized if it is designed by the government.
well, like cryptocurrencies aren't necessarily designed by the government.
Cryptocurrencies
Yes.
aren't, but the government creating their own cryptocurrency
Yeah.
version of the dollar, like kind of
Mm,
that.
yeah.
I don't know. I can how. Why would I trust that?
hmm And it is. I don't think
I mean,
natural.
I would do my best to attempt to understand it enough to trust it, but
Yeah.
it's just too sus for me. Like, why don't they just use one of the ones that already exists,
hmm
that's already decentralized? Like,
Yeah.
why? There's no reason to make your own.
I think so too. I mean, I'm hoping that Bitcoin and other potential cryptocurrencies that aren't controlled by the government are going to be the ones that are truly instantiated. And it would be nice to get away from centralized banking
Hmm.
because
And banking entirely.
yeah,
I don't want banks involved. I don't want insurance companies anymore. I don't want any of that. Like, those things are dumb.
I
They're
agree.
stupid. Loans, nothing. Like, they only serve to further destabilize the
Oh,
economy.
yeah, for sure. And you can't just print an infinite amount of Bitcoin. It's not how it
Mm-mm.
works, but you can with the US dollar. You can print as many $100 bills as you want without
Right.
any repercussions, which is just mind-blowing to me.
Right.
It's completely ruined. It's like one of the major flaws within a capitalist society is I think that specifically. And I could get into who controls the central banks. I'd be antiseptic. So I'm not going to talk about that. But
The Bitcoin is and its ability to like maintain itself and maintain, you know, its increase in value and like and maintain its utility to people throughout the years despite, you know, everything
Mm-hmm.
is just a prime example of like how that kind of thing can be used for commerce without throwing the other factors like that can come with being able to print
Yeah.
your own money. And um the I think the there's no good reason in my opinion for the government to create their own cryptocurrency rather than adopt one as the national
Mm-hmm.
currency. And if they do, what I see immediately following or soon after is the clamping down on um, their regulations on other cryptocurrencies and the
Yeah.
ability to get other cryptocurrencies in
Mm.
America, like they already have done with Bitcoin, making it very difficult to actually acquire Bitcoin without having an ID associated with it. Why is that?
Yeah.
Like, why? That's not even subtle. That's obvious. like, like you don't like not being able to track what people are doing with their exchanges when that
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be something that you are involved with anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I know that the Trump administration has slightly kind of pulled back a part of the at least some of the pretty intense regulations that are going on in cryptocurrencies and the ability to have that kind of free exchange. I mean, it's just it's almost like it would work too well, and so they have to be like, oh, okay, that means people don't need us anymore. We're going to try to do our best, you know, especially the people who are a part of that centralized banking who really, you know, benefit the least if it just has like a negative impact on them unless they change rapidly and do everything differently, which might be too good for the system. They have to, you know, be able to tell the government, you know, what the power they have right now is to, you know, kind of clamp, like you said, clamp down on this and make sure that it's, you know, as trackable as possible so that they can, you know, utilize their resources to still uh, monitor what's going on, you know, manipulate the market to their will. And,
Right.
you know,
Or
yeah.
at least in the information access on people's lives that they want to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, um,
Ready to call it a day?
I think we better call it there before we get on another long-term
Yeah.
tangent
Yeah.
topic.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a bug in here that needs to be located and
Killed.
destroyed.
Needs to die. Yes.
But that was some fascinating stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks for the deep dive on
Absolutely.
endocannabinoid.
Yeah. I hope I wasn't, you know, it's I tried to be as, you know, in depth as possible without going, you know, without getting too complicated, but also, you know, giving you a decent comprehensive understanding. And honestly, I mean, like I said, it's one of the most abundant receptors in the brain, and it's deeply involved within like the peripheral nervous system and, you know, the immune system, the gut brain axis, you know, peripheral tissues, everything, inflammation.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's involved in everything. And so try to give you as comprehensive as possible, but I mean, I could probably talk about it for another hour and still not be
I
done.
mean, that's kind of what comes with those high level
Mm-hmm.
views is like there's so much within them. It's hard to distill it down to
Yeah.
one podcast
Mm-hmm.
session. You know?
Absolutely. But I think I think it
I think you did a good job of that though. Like that it's very understandable.
Okay,
You know?
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And then we got to, you know, talk about some other stuff. I
Yeah.
thought was really interesting. Easy, nice, you know, free flow section there.
Yeah.
A good time. Mm-hmm. Got to vent about our philosophical musings.
You know, I'm getting to the point where like I've known about the bug wandering around here long enough that I'm starting to feel bugs
Oh,
crawling
dude,
on
that
me.
is one of the worst sensations ever. Just like,
I'm like scratching myself, like I feel like I've got something crawling up my leg.
yeah. I mean, we have that for a reason. I mean, it's definitely saved me a couple times from having bugs on myself. Is that like feeling of like knowing there's a bug, and then like I like feel that there's a bug, and I'll look, and sometimes there actually is a bug there. And you're like, oh my god, you know. And so it's good, but oftentimes it's kind of like one of those like
It's almost something
yeah.
that like reminds you.
Of the potential danger.
Yeah.
Because bugs are pretty bad if you get infected by one. If they bite you, things like that.
Well, they're just disgusting.
And they're pretty disgusting. Yeah.
They're small, dumb, and disgusting.
Yeah. Exactly. But
alrighty, well, that's it for today. But we will undoubtedly be back next
we'll
week.
be back.
Where another fascinating episode. So be sure to join us next week on Theta Wave.
Oh,
thanks for joining us.
Peace.
If I can actually stop the stream. Please tell me the stream is running.
Can you imagine? Record that entire thing. No, it was recording the whole time.
It was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, could you imagine?
Dude. Hey,